Motion or to move the motion. Motion on consolidation of bursary funds for equitable access to education in Kenya. Madam Speaker, I move that aware that pursuant to Article 53 of the Constitution, every child in Kenya is entitled to free and compulsory basic education. And the Basic Education Act provides that basic education should be guided by principles such as equitable access to all youth and equal access to education or institution. Further aware that many students in secondary schools and higher education institutions come from financially disadvantaged backgrounds, making it difficult for them to afford school fees and access education opportunities. Noting that over the years, various interventions have been made, including the issuance of bursaries through the National Government Constituency Development Fund, NCDF, National Government Affirmative Action Fund, GAF, and Ministry of Education and county governments through various county bursary funds. Concerned that despite these efforts, school fees remain unaffordable for many parents and students, and the allocation of bursaries has been plagued by nepotism, favoritism, and political manipulation, lack of transparency and accountability. Madam Speaker, further concerned that public learning institutions are primarily funded by the government through the Ministry of Education, and in the financial year 2024-2025, approximately Kenya shillings 656 billion was allocated to the education sector, making it difficult to ascertain the specific funds granted to each student, and that the lack of transparency in the disbursement of bursaries from various agencies makes it difficult to determine the total amount allocated in a financial year, thus hindering efforts to ensure equitable access to education for financially disadvantaged students. Now, therefore, the Senate urges the Ministry of Education to, 1, audit the funds allocated to bursaries by both the national government and county governments. 2, consolidate the funds distributed by various government entities and agencies with the aim of directing these funds directly to schools as supplementary capitation to facilitate the achievement of free secondary education, and calculate the cost of education per learner and make this information public for primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions, including the detailed breakdown of the annual financial requirements for each student across the country. Madam Speaker, this motion could not have come at a better time than now. Why am I saying that, Madam Speaker? Yesterday, we were treated with a show of ignorance, Madam Speaker, by the CS of Education, Migos Ogamba, who was here trying to answer questions raised by this House. Some of the questions that were asked by myself and others were asked by the majority whip, Senator Kalwale. And from the answers that we received, Mr. Speaker, we were made aware that the ministry is not aware of how much bursary or how much money goes to bursary across the country. They have no data, they have no way of knowing, they have no framework, they have no network of understanding how bursary is given out in this country, Madam Speaker. From that admission, now this motion comes at Madam Speaker, comes at a time when we now realize that a lot needs to be done in the Ministry of Education. This motion, as I said, is calling for consolidation of all bursaries so that we can have this money and add to the capitation in our education so that we can achieve free secondary education, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to start my moving by giving a story. In the year 2020, between 2020 and 2021, I don't remember exactly which month, I was driving home, but I passed through Garden Estate in Nairobi, Madam Speaker. And on my way home, I passed near the office of the then Member of Parliament of Risambu. And Madam Speaker, I saw women. It was about 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., Madam Speaker. Don't ask me where I was coming from, but at least I was going home. And I saw so many women with lassos and heavy clothes to cover, to keep them warm, Madam Speaker. And I was like, what are all these women, hundreds and thousands of women, doing outside at 3 a.m.? And there is no party. They were all seated in the cab row on the road waiting for the office to open. So I got out of the vehicle and I asked them, what are you doing here at this time of the night? They said, we are here waiting for 6 a.m. when the Member of Parliament will come and issue bursary forms. You can imagine the women were there at 3 a.m. They could not sleep, waiting for the form, and the form was not a guarantee you will get bursary. So that means if you don't sleep the whole night, you lose an opportunity to work tomorrow. And then after you give the bursary, you get the bursary form, you get 2,000, 1,000. It is time for this house to dignify our mothers. That we shouldn't be sitting down, waiting for a Member of Parliament, waiting for a governor, waiting for an MCA, waiting for a women rep to come and give you bursary that you then take to the government school as bursary. Yet the same government can send that money direct to school and make education free, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I always say, government gives you money to go pay a government institution. I mean, just look at that, Madam Speaker. The government is giving you money to go pay government. Why don't they just channel that amount to the schools in the capitation program so that they can make this education free, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, who has bursary? The same CS yesterday told us, and we were not aware, the House was not aware. It was made aware that even the President has bursary that is domiciled in the Labor Department, Madam Speaker. The President has bursary that is meant for education, but it is in the Labor Department. I don't understand. We don't understand. We could not understand, Madam Speaker. The MP has bursary. The women rep has a bursary. The governor has bursary. The MCA has bursary. The only person who does not have bursary is the senator. So if somebody would want to argue, we want this bursary because we are elected so that we can take to the people, then they should come and learn from this house that you can lead people without making them sit down on the ground so that you can give them 2,000 for bursary. That money can go direct to the schools, just the way we get money from NHIF, and now that goes direct to the hospitals, and we don't give MPs or politicians to take that money to the people. By going around, who is sick, take this 2,000, go to the hospital. Who is sick, take this 1,000. If we don't do that with health, let's not do that with education, Madam Speaker. What is this motion trying to cure, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, there is a lot of inefficiency and duplication when it comes to issuance of bursary. As I mentioned, we have about 7 elected leaders. 5 elected leaders who issue bursary, who disburse bursary. But they have no framework or network to connect and get to know who was given. So one person who is very, active and very, politically aware can get bursary from the MCA. The same person gets the bursary from MP. The same person gets the bursary from president. The same person gets bursary from women rep. And the same person gets bursary from governor. And all of them will issue that person bursary. And there is no way of them knowing whether they duplicated or there was duplication. So, Madam Speaker, it has been said that there's a lot of duplication and inefficiency in the issuance of bursary, Madam Speaker. So to cure that, we need to consolidate all this bursary and send it to secondary education as part of capitation to make education free, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there's a lot of corruption and bias when it comes to issuance of bursary. And I can give you a case scenario of how they steal money from bursary, Madam Speaker. When you issue bursary, this is what the MPs do. I'm not saying they steal. I'm just trying to explain how they do it, and then I'll tell you how it is stolen. Madam Speaker, when they issue bursary, if there is 10 students or 20 from one institution, one check is written, Madam Speaker. If, for example, you are in a certain constituency and you want to issue bursary to about 40 students in the same secondary school, one check is written. Madam Speaker, when that check is written, because it cannot be written the name of the person or the name of the beneficiary, it is written the name of the school, Madam Speaker. And when it hits school, for them to know whom that money belonged to, they must attach a list of all the students in that check. And you see, they cannot write on the check, so it is a list. So what happened, Madam Speaker, is that when they issue bursary, when they are showing it to the people, the check is written, and they say this check has 400,000, and it has the list of all these 21 students, or has these 40 students, and this goes to a certain school. That's the end of it, Madam Speaker. When that check is now taken to school, the list is removed, Madam Speaker, and a new list of about 2 students is attached. So, in cahoots with either the office of CDF or the issuance of the bursary and the principal of a certain school, that money only pays for 2 students, then the remainder is divided between the principal and the issuer, Madam Speaker. That is where corruption for bursary comes in, Madam Speaker. And to curb corruption in the bursary issuance, Madam Speaker, that's why I'm calling for consolidation so that it can be given to the Ministry of Education as part of capitation to make education free in the secondary schools, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there's a lot of bias, I said, favoritism, Madam Speaker. If you never voted for me, you will feel that you do not have a right to get bursary. Sometimes you don't face the MP, you don't face the MCA, or anyone who is issuing bursary, Madam Speaker. Sometimes the issue of politicians also. They say, you never voted for me, I don't want to see you here, Madam Speaker. So for us to make sure there is equitable and equity, we have to make sure that no politician is given money to dish to the people. Just the way we don't do with NHIF, and that is how we do, the way we don't do it with Pesa ya Wazee, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wanted to give an easy example. Yesterday, we were told here that the Ministry of Education, they have no idea how much is required to educate a child in Kenya from nursery school all the way to the university. It was said here by the CS Education. They have no data, they don't know. And somebody would ask, then why do you, where is your 27% of the capitation of the expenditure in the education, in Kenya's expenditure? Where did you get that 27%? Why not 30, why not 40, why not 90, Madam Speaker? That is to say, there is a lot of guesswork. We do not know how much a student will cost, or his education or her education will cost from nursery to the university, Madam Speaker. And that's why we are saying, if you read this motion very carefully, it's saying that calculate the cost of education per learner. We have now given them that opportunity. Calculate, so that we ask, how much do you need for a child? Madam Speaker, yesterday, the CS also said, we have 4.2 million learners in the secondary education, or in secondary schools. 4.2 million. And each student or each learner will receive a capitation of 22,244. Madam Speaker, that is the money the Ministry of Education is supposed to budget for. And if we can do the math, 4.2 million students, multiplied by 22,244, that is 93.4 billion for free secondary education, Madam Speaker, and that is for capitation. Now, if the ministry can afford the 93.4 billion, Madam Speaker, why don't we now take all the other money from the other bursary and scholarship funds and put it into this kitty of 93.4 billion so that we can have more billions and increase on capitation so that our education can be of quality and equal to everyone, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, to our surprise yesterday, we were told the Ministry of Education, which is mandated to provide education for all, has a scholarship program. You know, Madam Speaker, we cannot tell you to give education for all, but you have a kitty that you give special people, Madam Speaker. That is already discrimination. They have Elimu Scholarship Fund of 4 billion. Add this 4 billion to 93.4 billion to make it 97.4 billion. Madam Speaker, take the 11 billion that the CDF gives and add to this 97.4 billion to make it 108.4 billion. Mr. Speaker, every county gives about 300 million per year. Per county, Madam Speaker, that will be almost or more than 14 billion. So, Madam Speaker, if you calculate 93.4 plus the 4 billion Elimu scholarship, plus the CDF 11 billion, plus the counties 14 billion, even without counting the women reps, because I don't have the figures, you have 122.4 billion Kenyan shillings, Madam Speaker. And if you do the capitation of 4.2 million, that means each student will receive 30K, not the 22 we are talking about here. And Madam Speaker, 30K is enough money to take everyone to the level of a whole year of secondary education, and especially in day school, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is a high time, and I ask the members of this House, Madam Speaker, to support this motion, to help the Ministry of Education. And I really thank the CS, Migos Ogamba. Though he portrayed the ministry as clueless, but at least he was truthful. And he's very new in there. So let us help him. Because others before him never thought it was wise to have the consolidation of bursary, to have data, or to calculate the cost of education per learner. So let's take that advantage of the information we got and help the CS Migosi Ogamba to come up with a data or framework or network to understand the cost of education per learner, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as I conclude, this issue of consolidation of bursary has been spoken about by even people whom, when I mention who they are, you will see the importance of this issue. Madam Speaker, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Moses Wetangula, is on record saying that we should consolidate bursary. The CJ, Martha Koome, is on record, Madam Speaker, saying that we should consolidate this bursary, Madam Speaker. Even in this House, Madam Speaker, and other agencies like Elimu Bora, they also have said almost the same, Madam Speaker. The senators who have also been recorded mentioning something on that in their constituents or in their constituencies or even in the media, we have Senator Raphael Chimera, we have Senator Godfrey Osotsi, we have Senator Joe Nyoto, and others, Madam Speaker. So this tells you this is so important that we want to discuss it and make sure we compel the minister or the Department of Education to do as we tell them. Calculate the cost of education per learner, consolidate the funds distributed by various governments to ensure that or to facilitate the achievement of free secondary education, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, yesterday, the CS, and I'm saying we did not expect that from the Department of Education. Madam Speaker, we asked for how much bursary is given across the country. And the minister said, we do not know. And then they continue giving reasons that bursary is given by CDF, not us. So you can imagine the ministry that is entrusted to run the education of this country has no linkage with other players in the education industry. So that's to say, Madam Speaker, that we lose a lot of money in the name of giving bursaries to our people, Madam Speaker. And that issue of the presidential bursary being domiciled in the Labor Department, that is also something that the CS Education or the Education Department need to look into. Because why give bursaries, yet you can make education free? Because there is money, it's only that this money is, Madam Speaker, nobody knows where they are, nobody oversights them, nobody looks at that. Even the Ministry of Education itself told us yesterday that they do not know. Madam Speaker, I wish to call the seconder of the motion. I had requested Senator Olekina, but the de facto seconder has arrived. So allow me to invite Senator Chimera to second my motion. Thank you.
Senator Chimera.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I must commend Senator Thangwah for